Yo Tahuri, yo Tahuri, yo Tahuri. Yo Penuma Deja Huri, yo Penuma Deja Huri, yo Penuma Deja Huri. Yo Tahuri, yo Tahuri, yo Tahuri. Hey guys, what's going on? So today's episode of Walk Magick is a little bit different than the previous episodes. This intro, it's late. I'm walking around the park near my house again. I shot a video on Liber Israfel and how to do it from a practical point, hence the picture that you guys just saw. Now, that is a little mercurial sigil to Hudi in Chachma that I got from my teacher, rest in peace, William Allen Wheeler, and he claims to have gotten it from his holy guardian angel, and he gave it on to me to do with as I will. What better way than to plug it right into the beginning? And on the note of ancestors, being that Samhain, or Samhain rather, is going to be coming up this Saturday, I'm going to be doing an episode, the very next episode, on ancestors. So keep your eyes out for that. So I think it was a cool way to start this video off. Now, there's things in Liber Israfel that if you go at it from a scholarly point of view, you could break down the gematria on certain stuff. For example, in the line 18, I believe it is, there's a section, the speech and the silence, the words against the son of night, the voice of Tahudi in the universe, in the presence of the eternal, etc., etc. There's 11 lines in that section. Now, I fully break down how I use that section in practice, but I didn't break down why it has 11 lines and what is the gematria and the numerology behind the number 11 and its importance. I wanted this video to be about how to practice. I could talk about that stuff in another video separately, and I think that that's something that you should do on your own anyway. Like I said, I want you to be able to listen to what I'm going to say in this video coming up, and be able to start using Liber Israfel. What do I visualize, where, when, and why? And, you know, this is not like a definite 100% perfect analysis or anything, but I give from my own experience, how I perform Liber Israfel, so that you could take this, you could take notes, you could maybe print out a copy of Liber Israfel, maybe put it in a Google Doc with some spaces, so if you need to, you could take notes and mark down, hey, I want to do a visualization of something at this line, and write down what that visualization is in a quick little note, so you see it as you have your script, as you're doing this for the first few times. You get to the point where I'm at, where you have Liber Israfel memorized, and you'll know, okay, I'm saying this, so I need to visualize this. So let me just mention now, because I don't do it in the video coming up, that if you're using a mercurial ritual like Liber Israfel, you could go balls to the wall, and you could set up your temple or ritual space full mercurial setup. You could have an 8-pointed star on the floor painted in orange, and you could have orange lamps at each of the corners, like how it says in Libra O. You could do your LBRP and LBRH and greater invoking ritual of the mercurial hexagram, or sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, instead of the mercurial hexagram, I'll do the 12 hexagrams of the zodiac, and so I'll put like the tarot card of each zodiac sign exactly where they are around the temple space, so I know, okay, here's Aries, so I draw my hexagram for Aries there, and then I draw my hexagram for Taurus over there, so on and so forth. So I'll draw all 12 exactly where that constellation is at that moment, you know. So those are some examples. You could have an altar in the center. There's a 0.17, a pause. If you're doing it in a group ritual or by yourself, you could use that moment, as I talk about, for some type of communication with either Tahudi or some personal deity or HGA moment, or just to pull something out of your unconscious mind through this ritual. I give examples. You could consecrate your magical wand, which is very mercurial and is very chachma and very fiery, you know. So there's a lot of things that you could do with this ritual, and there's a lot of things that I've done. And I talk about some of it, but I definitely believe that if you take notes, this is your first time doing the ritual, after listening to this, you could definitely do it yourself and probably get a better result than if you've never done magic and you try doing it for the first time and end up just reading a script and not knowing really what's going on. So I just want to say that yeah, I'm working a lot, so I'm trying to put these videos out as much as possible. I'm not making any money off of these. I've decided this is strictly just my way to try to give back to some type of community. What I did was I had time to kill the other day and I knew that I wanted to do this video next. So I happened to be recording at Washington Square Park. So just keep in mind my time is very, very short right now, and I'm doing the best I can to keep these videos coming out. Just I feel like it's something that I need to do for my own will. But because of that, and also it's cold, so I'm not gonna really have the time at this moment to travel all over and do the whole show off the city and show off specific areas. If I find myself somewhere that I know I want to shoot a video, like Long Island City, Queens, for instance, if I happen to be around that area for some reason, I may take 20 minutes or a half hour and shoot a video, you know. But again, like with winter, I may just end up doing some of these Walk Magick videos, either a voice recording, so like I was walking in Washington Square Park for this one, but I didn't record it, video. So just, you know, as winter comes, I won't be doing the walking so much, but I do want to still keep videos coming. So I hope that you enjoy, and here you go. Enjoy the video. Cheers. Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So today I'm just going to be talking about Israfel, mostly from a practical point, not necessarily a scholarly full analysis of the text. I will give some details that pertain to maybe certain words or gematria, or maybe even a little historical value to certain things that are in the ritual Liber Israfel, but mostly I want to do that just so that you could take that information and apply it to a physical practice of the ritual. And let me also preface this video by saying that this is just how I perform the ritual, and it is by no means definite or authoritative. In 5 years, I may come back and have changes in the way I perform this ritual. Tomorrow, I might have changes in the way I perform this ritual. I've never done a single ritual, including something as simple as the LBRP, and it has never been exactly the same every single time I've done it. It's always been a new experience. As I grow, as my knowledge deepens, so does the way that I perform rituals and the way I perceive the rituals from an esoteric standpoint. So that being said, let me give my analysis of Liber Israfel. And I'll begin by mentioning that there's a little comment at the beginning of most publications of Liber Israfel that it's in brackets, and it says this book was formerly called Anubis and is referred to the 20th key, quote unquote, the angel. From the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the angel was called Judgment, or the Day of Judgment, or the Day of Wrath, and it had a picture of an angel blowing a trumpet, and it's believed that that was Israfel, letting everybody know that the Day of Judgment is upon them, that God is, or perhaps the Anointed One, Christ, has come back to judge the living and the dead, right? That whole concept. Now, from an esoteric standpoint, especially at the Lima, we don't have sin, we don't have a day of judgment, we don't have a heaven and hell in a place, as in a place that you go to when you die. You could choose to believe anything you want, but generally speaking, the Lima does not advocate that there is a, quote, heaven and hell. If you've been good and haven't sinned, you go to heaven. If you've sinned, you go to hell. No, we have esoteric understanding of those terms. So, for me personally, when I hear Day of Judgment, I think of the opening of the eye, and that's really when the tower comes crashing down, is when you've opened up the Ajna, and Ajna signifies the sphere of Chachma, where the third eye, or Ajna, is attributed to in the magician's tables. Note that this text is a sub-figura under the figure of 64, and 64 is 8 times 8. It's the square of 8. 8 times itself. 8 is the number of Mercury. So there's a big time mercurial influence upon this text, as you'll see as we go through it. So in one sense it signifies Chachma to me, in another sense it signifies perhaps the path of Beth, in another sense, as above, so below, it could even signify the path of Hod in the intellect and the scriptures, and etc., etc. Israfel is an angel that comes from the Abrahamic religions. He is big in the Arabic, Islamic states. And to me also, there's a sort of connection here with Lucifer as the herald star who summons the sun coming. And it's a different concept than the day of wrath or judgment, but it's almost a herald as somebody who's a messenger. And so there's a mercurial aspect to Lucifer as well. So I just wanted to mention that. So there is a sort of, in my mind, connection between Israfel and Lucifer. Now in verse 0, it says that the temple is in darkness, and I interpret darkness meaning that you're either under candlelight, or so that you can read your script, or otherwise, in an esoteric aspect, on an internal level, darkness can indicate a few things. Firstly, darkness could be that you are focused solely upon invoking God, that you have blotted out all else for the moment. Your mind is entirely blank. Or, I also take it to mean that you have invoked the divine light in your preliminary practices, and the light could be so bright that it's perceived as darkness because it's blinding until you've adjusted to it. Note that when you're performing this ritual, you should have done at least the LBRP. I'd usually do that, the LBRH, and then depending, sometimes I will do the 12 zodiacal hexagrams around the circle, as Liber shows you, or otherwise I will do the greater invoking ritual of the mercurial hexagram. In line 1, it says "Proculo procul este profane," and this is a beef that I have. Hymenaeus Beta added "vav" to that sentence. He says "vav proculo procul este profane." I have no idea why he added the vav. I could speculate, but I don't care to. It doesn't make any sense to me, so I removed the vav, and I've gone back to how Crowley had the sentence as "Proculo procul este profane." And when I say that word, I usually envision that word as a power, as a light, as an energy that has a command and authority of a divine nature. And I usually give the sign of the Emperor as I shout and command that. Mind you, I've already banished, I've done the LBRP, etc. So my space is clear, so I give the sign of the Emperor and say with power and authority, and imagine that becoming a light that clears the space. In the sign of the Emperor, Proculo procul este profane. As I return from that sign, from that great sign, I come into the sign of silence. I stand there, I crystallize my aura. I then usually do what you're commanded to do in the Star Ruby ritual, and that is swing my right finger backwards from my lip, and I say Balastium Peta. You could take that as you will. For me, it's kind of, I clear the space, I come back to receive the emptiness, and then I further command the space be cleared. Balastium Peta, which in the Book of the Law is like, it's followed by spit on your crapulous creeds, meaning that I banish all of the garbage of the old aeon in a sort of way. So I kind of attribute that to my understanding of it. Line 3, it goes on to have a dramatic statement. In the name of the mighty and terrible one, I proclaim that I have banished the shells unto their habitations. For me, if you have people around you, if you're doing this as a group ritual, you're letting people know what you've just done. You've cleared the space by your divine authority. You then go on to invoke Tahuti for the first time. And let me say, Tahuti is a mercurial god of sacred writings of the Egyptians. He corresponds with the sphere of Hakma and Hod, as well as the path of Beth on the tree of life. Here it says, the Lord of wisdom and of utterance, the God that cometh forth from the veil. To me, the veil being referred to is either the abyss and the veil of Isis, or possibly the veil of Paterketh, which separates the Nefesh, or animal soul, from Tifereth and the Ruach, the intellectual part of the soul. Plainly, the spirit through the veil into matter, the body of the magician. Verse 5 goes on to say, O thou majesty of Godhead, wisdom crowned Tahuti, wisdom indicating Chachma again. So he's crowned with wisdom, Chachma, in the sphere, from the Kabbalah, the tree of life. Lord of the gates of the universe. To me, the gates could possibly indicate the watchtowers from the Enochian Aethers. It could also be the 30 Aethers. Or it could also indicate the 50 gates of understanding. Since Chachma is beyond Bina, there might be some connection there. You're also starting this ritual below the abyss. I believe you're standing in Tiferet as you're performing this ritual, or somewhere in that general vicinity. So, or you could also set yourself up in the mercurial sphere of Hod, depending on what you're doing. You know, that's really up to you. So you're calling above the abyss. So it's sort of like these 49 gates, the 50th being death through the abyss, is what you're kind of breaking open. So it could be that's being referred to in line 5. Goes on to say the first invocations: Thee I invoke, O thou of the ibis head, thou who wieldest the wand of double power, which is the caduceus. Hold it in your right hand. So I want to say, as you say these lines, you visualize your astral body turning into what you're saying. So I visualize a caduceus. I may be holding a magical wand in my right hand, so I visualize it turn into a caduceus on the astral realm. In my left hand, I visualize an ankh with a rose in it, in the center where that loop is on the ankh. I visualize a rose there. So thou, and that's in my left hand on the astral. Or I may even be holding a physical ankh and see it turn into an ankh with a rose on the astral. Thou whose head is as an emerald, whose nemesis is a night sky blue. I see on the astral plane my head turn into Tahuti's head, that color. Thou whose skin is a flaming orange as though burned in a furnace, and I see my body turn into orange. And garbed as he is traditionally depicted in hieroglyphics, perhaps some type of skirt, maybe some type of singular toga cloth coming up over one of my shoulders, maybe some jewelry, right? And my skin orange. Behold, I am yesterday, today, and the brother of tomorrow. I'm born again and again. To me, these are facts that emphasize what I am as a human. They also emphasize something about Tahuti's nature, that it's almost like the idea that he is connected with the sun and the ship of Ra. I am the charioteer of the east. I see by mine own inward light, Lord of resurrection, who cometh forth from the dust. Here, I always visualize my heart light up as Tiferet in the Kabbalah, as it corresponds to the sun of astrology. Thus, I am establishing my own divinity, and therefore ability to call forth to the deity. There are references here to the tarot and paths of the surrounding sun in Tiferet, but I'm not going to get into the semantics with the associations of the Kabbalah. I would really prefer to stay on practical points. It also says the watchtowers again, which I again refer to the Enochian tablets. And that could also refer to the tattvas, because in the Enochian tablets you have 4 elemental tablets, and each tablet has 4 elemental quarters in it. And it's almost like the picture of the tattvas. Every element has a small piece of each other element in it. Verse 7 goes on to say, O ye, 2 divine hawks upon your pinnacles. Here, I always put my focus upon the caduceus in my right hand, and while holding either a simple wand in ritual, I keep the visual of twin serpents coiled around it, one white, one black, going up towards a sun disk or a phoenix, where if you read about the magical wand, the spark of light that comes out of your wand on the astral plane is attributed to the phoenix, as you'll see in 777. In this sense, the black and white serpents are the twin gods of Thelema, Ra, Horqueen, and Horpar Krat, the active and passive formulas of existence. Keep watch over the universe, ye who accompany the bier to the house of rest, who pilot the ship of Ra advancing onward to the heights of heaven, Lord of the shrine which standeth in the center of the earth. So again, we have that Tiferet aspect. We have Tahuti, who's attributed to standing on the ship of Ra, and the center of the earth, exactly as I explained above. But further, now the ship of Ra is associated and bunched together with the center of the earth, vitriol, the philosopher's stone of the wise, and thus the elixir of eternal life. If we take this as the center of the tree, it implies the solar consciousness of Tiferet, the will of the magician. Verse 8, Behold, he is in me and I in him. Mine is the radiance wherein Ptah floateth over the firmament. Tahuti is brought down into the being as a visual, but there is further to go before the connection is full. I travel upon high, tread upon the firmament of new, I raise a flashing flame with the lightning of mine eye. At this line, I always see a lightning bolt flash from the ajna. I raise a flashing flame with the lightning of mine eye. I see a lightning bolt shoot out of my third eye, hit something on the astral plane, and it sparks a fire, almost like the open eye striking down and blasting the burning tower. This verse 8 also goes on to say, ever rushing on in the splendor of the daily glorified Ra, giving my life to the dwellers of earth. Here you are in ritual. You're making a statement that when said must become a way of life. Else, as later when you say that your tongue is the sanctuary of truth, you had better mean that your life is one of service in performing the great work. Otherwise, you're saying something, you are creating something, and you're not living up to that. So you're creating a karmic link to something that you're going to have to pay off one way or another. So if you're saying your tongue is the sanctuary of truth, that you give your life to the dwellers of earth, you had better mean that you are of service to humanity. Now, if you're in like something like the AA, you're already dedicated to that path. But doing this ritual, when you say something, you create. I create as I speak, abracadabra. Let's take a look at verse 9. If I say, come up upon the mountains, the celestial water shall flow at my word. Here, as a result of performing the great work, one gains power of the astral realm, and that is what, in one sense, the waters are. In another sense, it could indicate the blood of the Grail and the mastery of emotions. Here's a next little poem almost, for I am Ra incarnate, Kefra created in the flesh, the eidolon of my father Tamu, lord of the city of the sun. So my understanding of this little piece is, this further invokes the sun. I see my head turn into the hawks for a moment, then when I say Kefra, I become the beetle who pushes the sun in the midnight hours. Tahuti sitting in Hakma is the ruler of the zodiac. The sun is the center of the zodiac, and thus, consciousness and ego is the center of the wheel of the zodiac, and wisdom surrounds the mind. It has many, many layers that I could really not explain in a short comment upon how to perform a ritual. But by practice of this ritual and study of the Kabbalah, gradual understanding of this concept will become clear as time goes on. Verse 10, the God who commands is in my mouth. The God of wisdom is in my heart. My tongue is the sanctuary of truth, and a God sitteth upon my lips. A magi speaks truth to enslave mankind. Thus their liberty is in reality a prison they must liberate themselves from in order to achieve unity with the divine in Kether. It's a winding paradox of epic spiritual proportions. Verse 11, my word is accomplished every day. So this is a statement of fact for a magician of the Lima. The word is the logos of God. It is itself the will of God to create, much as to speak is to create, abracadabra, or as Crowley changes that word, abrahadabra, in the word of the Aeon, the uniting of opposites and doing one's will upon earth. To do one's will is to accomplish one's word in this sense. Verse 11 goes on to say, and the desire of my heart realizes itself as that of Ptah when he createth. I am eternal, therefore all things are as my designs, therefore do all things obey my word. Here we have another statement of fact while you're in this ritual. It's a very interesting one to me. Saying this again only if it is truth that you are speaking means, in the way of positive affirmation, that the magician understands they are born of the substance of the divine, and being united with divinity in that essence means that God's will and the magician's will are one and the same. As Crowley so poignantly writes in Liber, there is no God but man. A person practicing magic in a system such as the Golden Dawn or AA starts at Malkuth and works their way up the tree of life towards Kether. Now, there are certain grades that vary from Golden Dawn to the Lima's AA, but the general premise that in this regard, once you hit the sphere of Chachma, which is 9-2, Crowley titles that grade the Maggid. It's a very complicated process whereby one can know themselves so much at the deepest recesses of their being that they are able to construct a Kabbalistic formula out of their will into a word or term, such as Crowley does with abrahadabra as the word of the Aeon, or the Lima, which is the word of his grade as a Magus. So, in that sense, my word is accomplished every day is really indicating that you are striving for your root will, the core essence of your being, what you are and what you have incarnated to do, and to pull that out in the form of the logos. Now here in verse 12, therefore do thou come forth unto me from thine abode in the silence, unutterable wisdom, all light, all power. Thus, I've established my divinity, and the magician enforces this authority and utilizes their ability to call forth to Tahuti. The silence which is being referred to is the place in the void, beyond the physical sense where spirit lies waiting. Now we have the next part of verse 12. Thoth, Hermes, Mercury, Odin. By whatever name I call thee, thou art still nameless to eternity. Come thou forth, I say, and aid and guard me in this work of art. It's interesting to me in this line, not just that Crowley is saying that comparative religion holds credence, in that the cultures which pray to these four gods are all tapped into the same source and called it what they thought correct based on culture and how they saw it, but also that even if these four gods are the same or separate entities, they are all tied together by being of a mercurial nature and possibly on the same power level or attributed to the same spheres on the Kabbalah. And thus the magician is calling to their essence to come forth rather than just the gods themselves. Thou, star of the east that didst conduct the Magi. This is interesting. Venus and Mercury are both called the morning star. Jesus being a mashup of many gods, it is fitting that Crowley taps into the Bible's pagan roots here. Verse 13 continues, Thou art the same, all present in heaven and hell, thou that vibratest between the light and the darkness, rising, descending, changing ever, yet ever the same. Here, I like to visualize several things, because the next verse says, the sun is thy father, thy mother is the moon. So I tend to see a symbol of the yin yang either within myself or somewhere about me. Tahuti or Mercury is a god that often has a story of descending into the underworld. So I visualize the tapping opening of my consciousness to be able to go into the unconscious mind to bring out this root will to invoke the deity. I often see somewhere about me a sun and a moon on the astral plane and connect myself with them, knowing that yes, they are Tahuti's mother and father, but in a spiritual sense they're also my mother and father, but they're also aspects of myself. As I was recording this video the other day, I had just had a conversation with Frater Orpheus where I did the interview with him, and so as an afterthought on this topic, the sun and moon kind of plays with an Ida and Pingala type of aspects, push-pull of Hatha Yoga. And so the Ida and the Pingala are the sun and moon inside, and they're kind of two aspects of your chakric system. And in the center column is the Sushumna. So you begin by activating the Ida and Pingala, usually through pranayama, breathing through each side of the nostril. The left side is the Ida, the right nostril is the Pingala. So you'll alternate your breathing through one nostril out the other, in that nostril out the other, back and forth, in and out, in and out. And when you do that, you create this left-right pattern in your unconscious body, and it gets these energies flowing through the chakric system. Now, talking with Frater Orpheus, if you take a look at the picture that came from him and we put in the interview video, here he has an interesting Kabbalistic sort of Ida and Pingala, where these paths equal 93, and so you have the three middle paths that equal 93, and you could take that as the Sushumna, these neutral, right? And then you have the female and the male, 93 formula, Viaov, and then Chet, etc. Right. So I haven't been able to do this yet. I have been busy, but I wanted to make a point to say that I am going to try to do at this part in the ritual a visualization where I illuminate these specific paths and start to activate some type of Kundalini energy and try to get Ida and Pingala energy flowing through and create the Sushumna effect where you could allow chakric energy to rise from your root chakra up towards the Sahasrara. So I just wanted to make a point to throw that into the video as well. I think it's pretty cool. And so lighting up those paths, activating them, could potentially interplay with this sun and moon aspect very nicely, where I create a contact with the physical sun, the physical moon, both on the physical plane but also on the astral plane, then within myself, as well as the yin-yang within myself, and then activate the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna through these Kabbalistic paths. So just an idea, and I am going to try it. So this has not been tested yet. I have not gotten around to doing this. If I do it in the future, I'll come back and drop like a 2-minute video or 5-minute video explaining what I thought about it. But it was just an afterthought. I thought it was pretty cool. Either way, you could still do some other stuff with Sun and Moon at these lines, and some Ida and Pingala, either yoga very quickly because you're in ritual form, so things are moving. But yeah, just a couple of thoughts. If you play around with those ideas, you do some research if you're not familiar, you'll understand a little bit better what I mean and kind of how to activate those systems. Tahuti, Mercury, Israfel, etc. is being given more characteristics than a mere appearance as before. So I'm also, as I'm visualizing the creation of Tahuti, and I'm still holding that visualization in my astral body of Tahuti with the head, the green head of Anubis, etc. I'm now giving him his personality, character. I'm giving him a backstory, and I'm creating within myself this narrative. Now some of its nature is being invoked into the magician, but also the mind is being drawn to the nature of duality, of Mercury and Chachma. Again, we are given opposites to unite mentally. Mercury is famous in all mythos for venturing not only through the heavens, but also descending into the hell of Hades. There is much value in the hero epics in this first line if you study mythology. Now, the invocation touches on something that's very famous from the Bornless ritual. Come thou forth, I say, come thou forth and make all spirits subject unto me, etc., etc. When I use this verse, I tend to see elemental spirits of every element that I'm calling to: fire, wind, water, earth, the ether. I see a whole bunch of spirits. I get their attention from all over the universe, and whether they come to me, to my circle's perimeter, or they stay where they are, they acknowledge and they send forth energy. I have all of their attention, and I tend to see them group up around me. Note that this verse is slight variation from its original wording in the Bornless ritual, but now the magician has established several things, including exhibiting the powers of divinity within. They are asking to be bestowed with the power over all types of spirits, to be called to aid in the invocation by coming to the circle. Verse 15, I invoke the priestess of the silver star. I see the curved one by the ritual of silence. Verse 16, I make open the gates of bliss. I descend from the palace of the stars. I greet you, I embrace you, all children of earth that are gathered together in the hall of darkness. If you're doing this as a group ritual, you're now talking to your audience, having invoked all of this energy in these different deities. For myself, when I give this line, it says by the ritual of silence, so I first give the sign of silence, and I invoke Asi, the curved one. For me, it's sort of like Isis, it could be Diana, it could be any type of virgin or mother moon goddess that you're comfortable with, right? I then give the sign of the opening of the veil of Parokath, which is Dominus Liminis in AA. There, I tend to personally stand in the sign of Osiris Slain, in the sign of the cross, and I also like to envision a crescent above my head, like a moon, since I've just invoked a moon goddess, but it also creates the horn. So now if I look at the way I'm standing in the sign of the cross with these horns above my head, I see myself as Mercury. I'm like a standing image on the astral plane of the sigil of Mercury, or the symbol of Mercury rather. At line 17, there's a pause, and I find this pause very important. I've used it for several things over the years, including consecration of mercurial talismans, consumptions of cake of light. There's a lot you could do. You could consecrate magical weapons, especially if they're of a mercurial nature. But traditionally, this pause is here for communication with Tahuti, the HGA, or divinity, depending on what your god or goddess is. In most cases, if one gets any thought, voice, feeling, or image at this moment, it is worth recording it for meditation at a later time in the magical diary, as the unconscious mind has been rendered wide open, and creativity and the spirit can burst forth. Even if there is only silence, that too could be important point of meditation. Then there are times one gets a criticizing or even self-deprecating thought. One might get the thought that this is foolishness and it's nonsense. This too could be very important. This could simply be the result of knowing something that you need to change, or else Satan, the guard of the unconscious mind, hell, the keeper of hell, which is the depths of the unconsciousness, is standing there, and he's preventing you from getting too deep into it. But even that is a valid point for meditation. It's a great point should it occur, because you're now on a path that you have something that you could work on. All of it is a growing point if used. Verse 18 is, for me, I love this line, and it took me a long time to really appreciate its value. It says, the speech in the silence, the words against the son of night, the voice of Tahuti in the universe, in the presence of the eternal, the formulas of knowledge, the wisdom of breath, the root of vibration, the shaking of the invisible, the rolling asunder of the darkness, the becoming visible of matter, the piercing of the scales of the crocodile, the breaking forth of the light. These lines are from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. In practice, I use these to finally solidify the invoked Tahuti that has come through the veil into my body of light and dwells within me now. It is a final point to seal the invocation. By saying each line, you could push energy in the manner to which it alludes. For example, you begin by saying the speech in the silence, at which time you move the light of Kether above your head into Chachma on the left side of your ear, or in the Ajna, whichever you prefer. This is the light becoming sound, the speech in the silence, the light, the divine light that's passed through the prism of the Ein Sof, Ein Sof Or. That light has now become sound. It's become some type of movement that's created a sound. On the next line, you take your will, in this case of Chachma, the will to invoke Tahuti, and say the words against the son of night, which forces the root will of Chachma into the right side in Bina. The next two lines force the will down through the abyss in the twin phases. Word or will has turned from the speech in the silence, the logos, into something tangible, breath, though still invisible, but that vibration can thus be measured. The root of vibration implies the previous idea, but I also see it as an awakening of the Kundalini below. We have thus far focused on that which is above, but there is always that which is below to accompany it. Now the word has been brought down to consciousness. Kundalini could be awakened if you choose, and manifestation may occur. On the second to last line, I make extra efforts especially. I visualize my own physical body cracking, the light breaking through the cracks, and then on the last line, I see myself mentally as being made purely of light, which slowly my eyes adjust to, and in place of this large sphere of luminescence, I see Tahuti where only moments ago I was. This formula is applicable in numerous ways depending upon the ritual and the function to which you apply it. Note that the crocodile is Sebek. It is synonymous with the qliphothic energy of the low spirits of the Kabbalah, or rather the tree of death spheres if you'd like. It is a crocodile that Harpocrates had to master or else be destroyed, similar to the dragon of St. Michael and George. It represents the struggle of the mind to grasp onto things of a physical nature in such a way that one's ego becomes finally anchored and no spiritual growth can take place. In Egypt, crocodiles of the Nile were probably the most dangerous beasts, and thus this god was visualized as a crocodile, truly imparting the idea of the dangers of the flesh and magic when one is not yet liberated. In Kabbalah, it is right in line with the Nefesh. There's much more that can be done with this if you play around with it, but for practical purposes, really, I just wanted to emphasize that you're pushing energy through the tree of life within your own body, and you're manifesting your will to invoke Tahuti. Verses 19 and 20 follow the lection, so you continue talking. Usually at verse 20, I give the sign of the closing of the veil, so that I'm ending this ritual. There's not going to be any wandering spirits in my temple space after I leave. I then take my time and I focus upon Tahuti being fully invoked and dwelling within me. The speaker silently departs, the listeners disperse into their homes, yea, they disperse into their homes. When there are people present in a group rendition of this ritual, I say it aloud. Otherwise, I merely do as it says, ending the ritual with the sign of silence. A knock and closing word could be given if one is so inclined, such as teletestai or kabs on pact, konks on pax, light and extension, a knock after each word. Love is the law, love under will. I truly hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you got something beneficial from it. All the best in your practices.